Hello and welcome back to Deck Tech Tuesday. My name is Owen and today we are going over a green-black ramp deck that takes advantage of Delirium. Without further ado, let's get started. Starting with the spells, we are running 3 copies of Traverse the Uun Wald. Now this has been an all-star on ramp decks for the past few months, getting a kind of a toolbox thing, searching for any land or creature. If you have Delirium, which we do get pretty quickly in the game, or in the early game, it kind of counts for a land if you can just use it on turn 1 to get a basic land from your deck. Next, we're running 3 copies of Vessel of Nency. Now this is good if you have a few more lands in your opening hand and you don't want to use Traverse, but it's also good just to use before it, because then maybe, if you're lucky enough on turn 2, you could activate Delirium, then turn 3 use maybe a 2-mana ramp spell, and use the Traverse the Uun Wald to get a creature that you could play on turn 4 or 5. Next, 2 copies of Ruin in Their Wake. Now, this hasn't been in a lot of ramp decks, and I'm kind of surprised by that. I know it definitely won't be in any 3-color ramp decks, and I just really feel like it should be in the 2-mana ramp decks, and I don't know why they're not running it. But we don't need, I guess, Delirium as much as some of the other ramp decks do, and so they need more untapped green sources, because they need Vessels to be cracked early in the game. But I like this card because it can get you maybe a Thought-Knot Seer on turn 3, and that's pretty awesome. Our last 2 drop, 2 copies of Grapple with the Past. Now this has also been a good card in Delirium decks, getting back a creature or land from your graveyard, which can help us in kind of assuring land drops, or it can get a creature back that's died, so kind of some reanimation, and it's also just a way to activate Delirium. The only 3-drop we're running, 1 copy of Natural Connection. Now I like this as kind of a way to search up maybe a Wastes if you need one, or just a swamp, because we do have a few double black cards in our deck that we do really want to get, and we also run, I guess we do run a few black cards in the deck, so we do want to be able to search up that, and it's just kind of nice to run. And we're not running Nissa's Pilgrimage because that does rotate in September when Kaladesh comes out. On to the 4 drops, 2 copies of From Beyond. Now this is another kind of toolbox-y type of card. It can help us ramp. Later in the game it can search up maybe a big game winner. But usually it's just going to be a way to make blockers even sometimes, but usually, yeah, just a way to ramp and search up creatures. On to the 6 drops, 3 copies of Ever After. Now, this is a very good card in this deck. We do have a few creatures with haste, and I think it is a really awesome card. We do have 5 ways of getting cards into our graveyard other than just dying with the Vessel of Nency and the Grapple with the Pasts. And so Ever After can be really great. Maybe if they destroy a creature and attack all in thinking they could win on the next turn, you can Ever After get back 2 big game winners and kind of sweep the game from there, and it's a really awesome card to play with. The last spell we're running, 1 copy of Nissa's Renewal. Now you could maybe bump this up to 2 and take out an Ever After if you wanted, but I like just running the 1 copy. It's a way to gain life against kind of the more creature heavy decks. It's of course a great ramp card, and yeah, I guess that's the main reasons for being in the deck. Now on to the creatures. Let's go over both of them in a deck, dorks, I guess, at the same time. 3 copies of Deathcap Cultivator and 2 copies of Uun Wald Captive. Now they're both ways of ramping, and they both do different things. Deathcap Cultivator can add black to your mana pool and can get Death Touch if it has Delirium, but the Uun Wald Captive does have more. They flip-flop power and toughness, and it can be more, I guess, resilient later in the game, being able to transform and ramping you more. Next creature we're running, 3 copies of Tireless Tracker. Now, this isn't like a normal, I guess, ramp deck. We're running a lot more early game creatures, kind of as a result of a lot of creature-based decks. There's not really many control decks anymore, and Tireless Tracker can get us a lot of card draw, making clue tokens with lands entering the battlefield, and it can also be a game winner if we just can't get any of our big threats out. Our next creature, 2 copies of Thought-Knot Seer. Now this is a good card to be running, and it is one of the reasons we are using Wastes in the deck. It can kind of help against the few control matches we might have, but also it just helps out against really any deck. You get to know what they're running on turn 3, where this usually comes out if we do have a Rune in their wake, or a Mana Dork, and it's just a really nice card to play with, and we don't care much about them drawing a card. On to the 5-drop creatures, 3 copies of the Gitrog Monster. Now, this is kind of a budget option that I decided to go with. If you really wanted to, and probably a better card to go with would be Ishkana Graph Widow, But I do like the Gitrog as a bigger creature. It gets its card advantage. It can win the game faster than Ishkana, but in some situations I could see running either one. It's just kind of your opinion, and if you want to run more budget ramp deck, I'd run the Gitrog Monster instead. Now onto my favorite creature in the deck, 4 copies of Reality Smasher. Now this card is just insane to get out on turn 3 or 4, or not turn 3, but that would be pretty awesome if you could. But maybe putting 2 of these in your graveyard, and maybe you've gotten them down to 10 life, or closer to that, maybe 12, 11. With other creatures, you can ever after get both of them back and then swing in for 10, and that's an insane play on turn 6 or 7. And it's just a really great card, and it really stands out in this deck. Onto the 6 drops, 1 copy of Uun Wald Observer. Now, most of the creatures in our deck are above 4 toughness, and instead of this, maybe you could run another Thought-Knot Seer, but I do like this card because it's a big threat, and it gives us a little more card advantage, and it's also another budget option, but you could take this out and maybe put in like an Ulamog, or maybe an Emrakul, I guess you could see that, but yeah, it's just kind of a budget option in the deck. Our last 2 6 drops, 2 copies of Oblivion Sower. Now, this card is very good because it is a 6-mana 5/8, which is ahead of curve, and it is a way of ramping, and it's just a nice big blocker. Now, the last non-land card in the deck, 1 copy of Void Winnower. Now, this is a very good card. I don't want to run a lot of them because they are 9 mana, and you could switch this out for Emrakul or Ulamog, but I do like this because it is a very difficult card to play against. It helps against a lot of humans decks, cuts out all their kind of big plays, I guess, and also helps against Bank Company, them not being able to cast that, and it is just a good card because it blocks a lot of the good cards in the format. Now on to the lands. 1 copy of Llanowar Wastes, 1 copy of Blighted Woodland, 1 copy of Hissing Quagmire, 3 Wastes, 4 Swamps, and 12 Forests. So that's all for this deck. I think it is pretty competitive. I have not tried it out at a Friday Night Magic yet, but I am planning on doing it this Friday. It has done pretty good in testing. I might put in maybe a few Ulamogs if I get some, but I'm probably just going to try out the budget version because I really like to try out budget decks there. And Friday Night Magic isn't really the place for competitive decks, and my LGS, they don't really have a lot of them. They're mostly kind of beginners. And so I'm just going to be kind of running a beginner deck. But anyways, I hope you like it. I'm sorry that I did not upload a Gaming Friday video. I just didn't have the time this week, but there will be one this Friday, so don't miss out on that, and I'll see you guys next video.